I'm Barney Rush. I'm the mayor of the town. And let me quickly, before turning it over to the developers, we're very eager to hear from you. And thank you very much for making a presentation tonight for the benefit of all of us. Let me just quickly say on our end of the town, my colleagues Joy White, Irene Lane, Ellen Cornelius Erickson, and Joel Rubin are with me. And Joel is the liaison to a committee that we formed that I know you're aware of, who give us good advice on how to think through this whole very dramatic opportunity that's in front of us. Four of the members of that committee, I believe, I'm not scrolling across all screens, but I'm going to assume they're on the call: Chris Brew, Sarah Smith, Joe Rubin, and Rod Henderer, and appreciate their joining. This is for benefit of all of our residents. This is the first time that any of us have had an opportunity to see what the developers are going to be presenting to us tonight by way of a concept plan for the development of the 4-H site. We have wanted to be very clear that it's important for them to make a presentation to the town as a whole, so that everybody can hear what they have to say at the same time, and give us a chance to respond afterwards. But this is your opportunity for the developers to share with the town what you have in mind. And I'd also like to mention that, just by way of format here, we're generally going to follow the same format we followed before when you last spoke to us back in September, which is that Todd is going to be the moderator. And we're going to ask residents to certainly feel free to submit their questions by a chat box, which will go directly to Todd. And Todd will then basically read out the questions and group them appropriately when we get to the Q&A part of the evening. But also, we'd like to make a request that for the residents, that if you could wait to ask the question till the end or very near the end of the presentation, because one of the things we found out is, of course, often people ask questions and later in the presentation, the question is addressed. So it would just be helpful to Todd and his managing of this if the questions come in when you basically have heard the presentation and realize there's something that you have in mind that has not been addressed. And also to make sure that we're fair to everybody, we had asked that everybody ask one question. And if we get through that and there's time, then we can go back for another round. But again, we want to make sure that we keep it as open and fair as possible to get to everybody who does have a question. In terms of steps after tonight, I think, frankly, we're going to be getting together afterwards and certainly looking for advice from the residents may have, but certainly from the committee as to how to help develop a process going forward. But we felt that before designing all that or working that through, the most important thing was to have this initial presentation of concept plan. With that, we look forward very much to hearing what you have to say. So I will turn it over to you, Gallery and Community 3.
Thank you very much for having us. We're happy to be here. We prepared something, and we're happy to share it. Yes, we've been working over the last few months to take into consideration things that we have heard, constraints that we have found out that maybe we knew or didn't know. But we're here to share where the beginning is. We'll go through tonight. I want to go through tonight a little bit more in depth about what type of place we envision here, the type of place that Tim has fostered in other places. I want to go through the timeline a little bit. And then we're here with Sarah Alexander from 40 Gals, who's going to walk through some of the first concept plans, but I think take into account some of the things that we've heard, and use it as a starting point for the discussion. As you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, there will be a process going forward from here. We don't know what that process is yet, but we're going to do it together. And I want tonight to be about what type of place we can really create here and transform this site into. So with that, I'll introduce Tim Gary of Gallery Living, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I am going to share my screen. So the first thing I just want to remind those of you that were here before, or those who weren't here before, just about the team we put together. Galerie Living and Community 3 have partnered to redevelop this site. Galerie comes with an extensive history of creating, first-class senior living communities, and we're very happy to be partners with them. We also have a local team that is also first-class in engineering, legal, architecture, interior design, and the like, that have already begun to engage on this project. So just wanted to start with reminding everyone who the team is.
All right, well, my name is Tim Gary. I'm the CEO of Galerie Living. Been building and developing these type of communities for 25 years, and very excited to be here in your community, looking to do one of the most innovative senior living communities in the country. I want to say thank you for taking the time tonight to meet with us. This is a very important meeting. It's important because I want you to understand these are the first steps in the process. And in these steps, in this first step, we're going to go through how we would create a community and why we would create it in the fashion that we do. And then at the end of this, we'll be happy to take all your questions, and the questions that we cannot answer in complete detail, I'm sure we'll get back to you at a later time with those answers.
By the way, I'm sorry, Tim, we just got in a request. Could you move closer to the mic, please?
Yeah,
so we can all hear you clearly.
I did. I just moved it closer.
Okay. Is that any better?
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you. Please.
Okay. So to begin the process, first thing I think is important is to understand who we are, the history of Galerie, because that helps give a basis for why we create communities the way we do today. In 1996, we began our first communities, and we were developing communities that you would have typically seen. Some of those communities you see today, and a good example of that community would be a Sunrise community that you would see today. We have moved on to much more advanced communities in 2022. And how do we get there? We got there because we became a vertically integrated company, meaning we were the operators of the communities. We were experiencing the service levels with the residents. We were having experiences with the families, understanding the needs and the desires of the entire family. And that's one thing that you're going to hear tonight, is that we went from building communities for residents to building communities for families. And through that management experience, we had the development arm, and we have the capital arm, and then the design teams as well, that support outside design teams. So through this team, we also realized more recently the great need for this technology innovation, because technology helps inform the entire family that we're supporting. It also helps support our management team and operations to really provide the most leading edge healthcare product in the world. So where we're headed with that, the future of that is going to be predictive healthcare, meaning we're going to be able to understand and see viruses and diseases and things that we would be able to recognize these things earlier in the phases that they come. So we're excited to show you today our new health sustainability senior platform, and we're going to move into this next phase of it. So the one thing that, and this is the core of who Galerie Living is, and I mean, we put these pictures on here because these are pictures taken at our community. These are families and residents and like the chef. He's a great culinary director for Gallery Living. So that gives you an example. But over here to the left, you see a chart. And in the center of this, you have dignity, happiness, innovation, and excellence. These are our core values. And what you're going to notice, and this is something that is really important when you're putting together a community, is how does that community support the whole family? How does that support mom who's living there or grandmother who's living there? How does that support the grandchildren who come visit? How does that support even the brothers and sisters of the residents of the community to come and visit? And once you realize how that comes together, it's magic. It becomes a magical place and an exciting place to come and visit with the family. So we take, and I'll take dignity for as one of the core values, and I won't go through them all, but the way we do that is we embed dignity into the people that are working and servicing in the community. So, for example, our culinary chef, you know, and how the wait staff works in our community. So you're going to see top shelf restaurant spaces. We not just have one restaurant, we'll have 4 restaurants in the space, and there'll be different types of restaurant spaces for the residents and for the families. And then you'll also see that dignity is played out into the design and how we pay attention to every detail of the design. Just like if you were in a Four Seasons, or if you were in a Ritz-Carlton, or if you were in any type of nice high-end resorts, you're going to see these high-end details coming out. And that's a huge part of how that dignity works. But the dignity comes out in also the technology, because the technology that supports the residents in these communities helps us understand, for example, this predictive care model, or it helps us to keep the care in the back of house, so that what you're seeing is you're going to see life, you're going to see things that the entire family can enjoy. So I think the best thing to do is I'm going to come back to an example of this when we get to a site plan and show you how these elements work, these values work. Let's just talk about, I'm going to talk about how this dignity deals with space. So for example, you're going to notice one of your comments that you've brought out in the community is, is walking paths. And you're going to see how we integrated those walking paths into our community. But the walking path doesn't just stop and start at the sidewalk. That walking path starts and it leads you to something. So it's going to lead you to a sandwich shop. It's going to lead you to a coffee shop. And it's not just a coffee shop for the residents. It's a coffee shop for the whole entire community. It's fronting the main streets. And then that coffee shop, maybe that's a place where everyone meets. But the people who are serving you there, they also know you, because that technology platform is supporting you, and it's also supporting the family in there. And then the people component of it is, it's a place where the people, when we talk about people, we talk about the family, because you could transition from the coffee shop into, you could go to a retail store. Or you could transition from the retail store over to a tea house or a florist shop. So you're going to see these type of things that we've considered, and we do this in all of our communities because it's about the family. In this slide, what you're seeing is you're seeing real examples of spaces in our communities. So, for example, on the top left, this is in a wine tasting room. It is, so what we do in this space, when you enter the space, it is very different from the space that you came out of. And when you transition from this space, you also notice that, so when you're standing in the space, you notice that door in there, you see that light coming in. We make sure that we're bringing in light from those directions. On the other side of that, you can't see this right now, but there's a courtyard on the other side. And then that courtyard faces, there's fountains, and then it faces other homes, or it would face a tea house or a garden. So then you have restaurant space up on the right, so it's fine dining, and the one down here with the bistro right in the center, bottom. That one is more of a breakfast, lunch, bistro, coffee shop area. If you look to the right, you're going to see a fireplace that's inside of a unit. So we put a lot of great detail into the fireplaces, into the homes. In our units, we will use an 8-foot door, for example. That brings in a lot more volume to the space. These are very important things. They're part of that dignity factor, as part of that excellence that we put into our design. So these are just some great examples of what some of our communities are like. Of course, when we are considering this particular location, the architecture and the interior design components will definitely be associated with the neighborhood.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the timeline here, and of course this is in flux, but it's a roadmap to, I think, where we're going. It starts on the left with the town hall we had in September, and we actually closed on the property in December. We are here today in February, and then from today till it's built and open is going to take a long time. It's probably going to take about 4.5 or 5 years. And that's because it has to go through a certain process in the county, a certain process in the town. We have to go through a building permit, and construction will take about 24 months. But I want to focus on this first part right here and know that today is kind of the first step, or the second step, I'll say, in all of us really narrowing down what we're going to do here. And it isn't all going to come at once. It will be slowly as we refine a site plan and a building program that that evolves over about the next 2 years. So I know some people want to have site plan done and, okay, what's it going to be, and this is it. What we're showing today is what we think is a good idea. It is the right thing for this site, but it is going to morph and change some, so that as time goes on. So I want to stress that today is really a first step, and it is, I think, a good plan, but there are many more steps to this process, from, picking it, determining where the actual sidewalk is, to the, what are the railings made of, and where is the access, and everything. So my request is patience, and I trust that we will get there in the end. The second thing I want to talk about in relation to that is some of the things that we heard from you. Now, these are kind of 4 overarching things that we received in the letter that we received in September, but there are other things that we have heard as well. I met with a group of neighbors on Woodside a couple of weeks ago. We're working out how we can meet or have multiple meetings for some residents on Thornapple the first week in March, and those are extremely helpful for us to see what you see on the ground right at the property. So these 4 things are the main things that you talked about: traffic management, avoiding cut throughs through the site. Forest conservation is very important. It is very important about saving trees, making sure not only that the the vegetation is protected or enhanced, but also the wildlife. Amenities. How can this redevelopment of what is an existing campus, how can it be redeveloped into something where engagement is improved? And that's one of our goals too. And lastly, open space, and how can we make sure that we're not building all the way up against the property line, and there's a that it doesn't overpower what is an already existing site. So those things we've taken into account in this plan, and I think that the details of those will continue to evolve. And as I mentioned, the details that aren't here, more littler things. You know, what happens with the bamboo forest that's there right now, and how do we deal with it? Cut it back, leave it there. Those are all things that we will work on over this next, you know, year to 2 years to really define in detail the eventual plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Alexander from 40 Gallus, who's going to walk you through the context and the site plans, the images that we've prepared.
Thank you, Grant. Good evening, everyone. We're really excited to be here and to be talking with you all about tonight's to the site tonight. As Grant said, I'm Sarah Alexander with Torty Gallus and Partners, and we've been working over the last few months to try and develop some of the ideas you'll see today. But as Grant emphasized, this is just a start. So what you're seeing today is just the start of the conversation, and we're excited to hear what you have to say about it. For the site itself, I think everyone's probably familiar with where we're talking about, but just in case, we are talking about the previous 4-H headquarters on Connecticut Avenue, here located with the red star on Connecticut Avenue in the site plan. Zooming in here, you can see the site, the existing buildings here shown in black. The existing curb cuts on Connecticut Avenue are shown here with the blue arrows. You'll see that we are preserving those. There is also an additional unimproved curb cut on Thornapple, which we will not be utilizing. The site itself has a wonderful tree buffer. You can see here in green, we are preserving that, which you will see. And it also has some significant grade on the western side, which we will not be touching because we are preserving the trees there. Additionally, there is the town garage. You'll see we have incorporated that into our project as well. But the campus itself, as you can see, is a collection of buildings spread out across the site. And I think that holds true as to what you'll see we're proposing as well, keeping that campus feel. Next, please. And then here for our site plan, most importantly, and what we've heard repetitively from the community, was to preserve the existing tree canopy. And we'll go into that more in some diagrams, but you can see we've done that here with the green buffer all around. Then everything you see here in dark gray, those are the rooftop elements of our buildings. So you can see it's a series of smaller buildings. It's not just one large mega building, but a collection of these smaller scale buildings that kind of sprinkle themselves across the site, activating intimate courtyards and experiences as you go throughout. I'm going to start on Connecticut Avenue. On the axis with Taylor Street, there is the blue arrows again, the existing curb cuts. And between those, we're proposing this wonderful public fountain that will be kind of terminate the Taylor Street and be the entry arrival point for our project. Additionally, to the north of there, we're having a more linear style more formal park along Connecticut with some tree yards or stoop yards for some of the units, which you'll see in our perspective. On the corner there, you see it's labeled florist. I think we're still debating what's the coffee house, what's the florist, what's the ice cream shop, but the idea of these activating shops that can bring both the community and the neighborhood together with the residents and their families and really help integrate this community and this project into the greater neighborhood. And then as you come into the project through underneath a porte cochere, you come into the central plaza. There's another porte cochere that is really the drop-off point for the clubhouse and the main front door of the building. So this would be where you would come if you were coming to see one of your family members, or if you were living here. This would be the front door. To the north of that, we have the theater building. So this is a wonderful building. I got to tour one when I went to Atlanta, where they have movies and activities and events, and it opens out to the outside. So there's really this porous and active experience for the residents there. And I think importantly, you can see the buildings frame these courtyards. So each courtyard has its own story, its own narrative, its own use. And Tim had this wonderful expression at our initial design charrette about elements of surprise. And so every time a resident or their family comes and they turn a corner or they get stimulated and they get a moment of joy finding these new elements sprinkled throughout the plan. So For instance, the one courtyard to next to the clubhouse is the bistro, and it has outdoor dining. The one to the south has a greenhouse or tea house and arcaded like sun loggia. We have additional ones sprinkled throughout with fountains and pergolas and other elements, bocce courts, all sorts of things. So lots of fun activities for the residents and their families. To the north here, you see labeled here the pool. That is a covered pool with a spa. So that is one of the larger amenities for the residents and potentially the community. I think that's still in development. But that is accessed both from internal and from the network of walking trails, which you can see sprinkled throughout, which I'll go through more in the next slide. But there is an access of network of walking trails too, that you could access that spa element. And then after that, you have to the south here, a driveway that comes down and that goes to the below grade parking. All parking for this project is below grade, not visible from the neighbors. And then sunken loading. So that would also be screened from view. And then the town garage. So all those are on the western side. The town garage is part of our below grade garage. So we're preserving the same scale and size as what's provided on site today. And I think that's the main things I was going to mention. I think, Tim, you had some things you wanted to talk about.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. You did a really good job there explaining that. So I don't know that I need to explain too much more, but I will say, I just wanted to point out a few things that we take into account as we design these communities and lay them out for the family, because one of the things that you want is you want a place that the entire family can come and enjoy the space together with. And so, you know, she's right about this floor shop or sandwich shop, and there's probably more than one space here. Could be, you know, an ice cream shop and a restaurant space here that we would want the community to enjoy. What that does is it really brings in different age groups, and different age groups are really important to the health of an entire family or to a community. It's the commingling of those age groups that bring energy. And so it's a really powerful component to our community, and we put that throughout the community. For example, the theater, it also acts as a town hall for the residents at Corso. But also, we found that a lot of the grandchildren do a lot of performances in this space. So we have a lot of dance recitals, we have a lot of piano recitals, we have a lot of musicals, we have plays, and you know, we work with the local schools and the local theaters to bring those things in. But we want those younger groups to come in and enjoy those, because it's the grandchildren of the people who live here, or even the children. So we create, for example, green space outside of this so that you can have events. Families can have their own events here that flow in and out, even if they wanted to have a larger family gathering. And then this is also some more retail spaces. So what you're seeing is, you're seeing the things that you want in life. You see the things that you've always enjoyed in life, and you want to maintain them. And we want to bring them into the community. So this is the reason we have found it is very important to build something that has common space. It's 40 to 50% of the overall space of the community, because no one wants to just live in their house. You know, they want to still enjoy the community they've always had, and that's what this allows you to do. In here, we would have restaurant spaces, and then the greenhouse. This is just one of the most exciting little components that we have put in a community, because it is a great place for a birthday party. It's a great place for a family event, and so these are the types of things that are important, and we're very excited about them. We hope you would enjoy them as well. So I'm going to stop here. I think I'm going to let Sarah keep talking to the logistics of the site and how we preserve the site.
Thank you. So I think in the conversations with the community, one thing that was very important was keeping some sort of walking trail or path around the site so that we can really, again, keep that porosity between us and the neighborhood. So that varies as you go around the site. On Connecticut Avenue, it's more formal. So like I mentioned, the wonderful fountain, the linear park, things that are a little bit more formal in nature, and the connection points through into the site occur on Connecticut Avenue mainly. But then on the northern side, we have still a very accessible, hard path that you can take, but it's more curvilinear, it's integrated into the forest. It has the connection points to the spa that I mentioned, but it might have at maybe the western end, some kind of feature or folly that's leading you there and something to walk towards. And then as you transition into the more steeper slopes and more rustic forest on the western side, it becomes more of a hiking path. So really a wonderful experience to have a hiking path right in your backyard here at the Chevy Chase Corso site. And then that continues around and leads you back to Connecticut Avenue on the southern side. So those are, I guess, the main connection points.
I would also like to mention that one of the number one amenities of any community we've ever had was walking trails. So these are very important to us and very important to the residents as well as the community.
And healthy living, I think all of that is very important in this endeavor. So this was also in response to what we've heard about the tree canopy. We wanted to share our existing footprints, our proposed footprints with existing building footprints. As you can see here in blue, that is what we're proposing. And then if you kind of look closely in gray, you can see the roof line and the parking, existing parking areas of the current site. So one of the things I think it's most important is, again, we're preserving the tree canopy. So all of the setbacks that are there currently, the edge of the parking lot now defines our street line on the west, the 81-foot setback on the north, the tree line on the southern side, all of those are maintained. We've actually increased the buffer on Thornapple on the northwest corner. You can see the existing buildings about 40 feet away from the adjacent neighbor's yard, and we've actually pulled that back and almost doubled it so that we can, again, create more of a buffer there than there is currently.
One thing I'd like to add here is that, and I like this slide because of this. What it tells is that there's an existing campus that's there right now that is was built for a certain time, and we're reimagining that campus in just a new form. But it really is the next evolution of this site to create a series of buildings that break down scale, that are not monolithic, that have 4 sides to each of the building, some of them many more. But it is that shape, that permeability of the site that is existing there now, but also planned to be there in the future.
So in addition to connecting to the town via the walking paths, we also wanted to connect with the character of the buildings we're proposing. So keeping things that you see throughout the neighborhood of Chevy Chase, the same quality materials, detailing, the gabled roofs, bays, dormers, masonry, stone, chimneys, all of these very nice residential character elements, using them in our project as well so that we can help integrate better into the community. So you'll see that in the next slide, which is, again, very early rendition of what we're seeing and hoping to share with you on this site. This is standing slightly elevated on Connecticut Avenue, looking towards the fountain I mentioned at the entry point. You can see the porte cochere there on kind of the center portion of the building with the 2 archways with wonderful stone detailing leading you into the site. To the right is the cafe / bistro or a coffee shop or whatever florist use that ends up being, but really activating that corner. And then walking towards the right there along Connecticut Avenue, you can see a series of these 2-story bays. Those are actually what they call city homes that allow you to have direct access from the street for your residents. It's still a single level residence, but it has a direct access on both the corridor side and the exterior side. So we love that because it helps activate the street. And I think that's a really important thing along Connecticut Avenue, giving individual door yards along the avenue. You can also see the main residential entry for this building, which is that kind of brown door there in the middle. That's like the main entry for this building, but there's several buildings sprinkled throughout the site. So each building has kind of its own identity and character as you move throughout. Another thing I think you see here is really the same elements I saw on the last slide: the dormer windows, the gable roofs, the glassy bay windows, chimneys, porches, balconies, good quality of materials, the stone, the masonry, slate roofs, all of those things coming together again to integrate our design into the neighborhood. And then moving into the development itself, this is in that main central plaza, looking towards the theater building. On the left-hand side with the large windows, you see the clubhouse, wonderful large glassy bay there. And then in the middle is one of the residential buildings. And then next to that with the clock tower, that's the theater building. Again, that wonderful building that Tim was talking about that had that indoor-outdoor play. And the florist shop, say on the right there, and an ice cream shop. And you can see all of the age groups here, your grandkids visiting, neighborhood residents coming for a walk, the people that live here in the development itself. This could really become the heart of this area, allowing all of those uses to really come together. And that same quality of materials and character that you saw on Connecticut Avenue comes in. And so while each building is unique and each design is different, they're all harmonious in that campus style so that they really integrate as one holistic design and really help anchor themselves here into this portion of Chevy Chase.
So the one thing I would like everyone to do is take your time. This is the beginning of the process. And imagine you and your family engaging in the community, engaging in this setting, because that's what's going to help you to drive toward the questions that you're going to want to ask, and it's going to help you to think about the things that you want to see in a community like this, because it's great feedback for us in this first step.
Yeah. So with that, I know that we've said a lot of stuff, and so we look forward to answering your questions. If you don't have time to ask the question today, we are here. I mean, you can ask Todd or anyone at the city for my email, and we can answer questions on a one-off basis. Again, thank you for your time tonight, and we look forward to continuing the process.
Thank you very much for that presentation. That was very helpful, and appreciate the concept plans laying out. Start with several things are certainly attractive in terms of saving the forest, the walking trail, things you paid attention to. A lot more to consider and discuss, but appreciate this chance. So let me turn it over to you, Todd, you're wrestling now with the various questions, which I understand not everybody has asked only one question. Not everybody waited till the end of the presentation. So that shows you how eager our town residents are. But do you need a moment, Todd, to collect, or are you ready to begin to come back with the questions our residents have asked?
A lot of questions about height of the buildings, average height of the buildings, density, lot coverage, gross square footage. Could you speak to those items?
Sure. The short answer is we don't know yet. The longer answer is we're trying to get the massing and the adjacencies and the setbacks and everything right first. There are a variety of different heights on site, as you can see from the renderings. There could be portions that are 1 story, there could be portions that are 5 stories. But it's really about creating a holistic ensemble that fits. And so there isn't one straight answer to that yet. And it's mostly because we're not there yet. But I will say it's what you saw is about what fits in this configuration. It's also in senior living, if you can speak more to this, it's not necessarily about the number of units, but more about how those units are integrated into the other amenities that are there. And so depending upon how those continue to lay out, that will inform how many units support it. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so the one thing I think is that I probably should have made clear earlier is that what we provide is different levels of independence. So you've always heard of independence, but the reality is we all have family members who are independent, but they're at different levels of independence. And so that's why we have city homes and we have 2-bedroom and we have 1-bedroom. But then we also have the assisted living component, and that assisted living component, it's the same, it gives you the same unit, but it has a higher level of service. And then we have memory care as well. But when you take all of those types of units, what you really need is about that 40 to 50% common space to support it, so that it really does become this comfortable family environment to really enjoy.
So I'm not trying to avoid the question. It's that we really don't know yet. We know that it's not 100 units, it's not 500 units, but it doesn't, senior living doesn't follow the same pattern that say multifamily would or townhouses do in terms of units. So it's really about making the envelope and the space that make it all work together.
Yeah.
So I hope that, as we get the feedback on a lot of things tonight, we will be able to refine this plan. And the next time we come to you, we will have a better idea of that. More concrete information about how many units, what the parking scenario is, they're all underground, and where different heights of buildings would be. So
Do you have any indication right now of the total number of units or total number of residents at least?
I mean, it's somewhere between 300 and 500, but I'm just guessing based upon the amount of square footage that looks like it's on there, but we haven't laid units out yet, so we really don't know.
So, and the reason, and we're not trying to dodge this question, if we understand the boundary, so I believe we've protected the tree line and we have nice space, and we've shown that we're recreating the campus. And so if that is the case, then we start diving into like the unit space. For example, a memory care unit space may be only 350 square feet, but a 2-bedroom unit may be 1,000, 1,200 square feet. So that combination will start driving the square footage and the unit mix. And we will then start getting into the number of units that we have on the property. It's, and this unit mix becomes really critical to the health of the community. If we know that we can get 60% of our residents to be independent in this community, it really helps create an energy in that community that keeps every resident healthy, and keeps everybody at a better state. It helps also not just the residents, but it helps the employees and it helps the families who are visiting. So we will dive into that. It's not just a simple, this is not a real estate play. This is a healthcare journey play. And that's what I really want to make sure everybody understands, is that we spend a tremendous amount of time designing and building around this healthcare model.
It's counterintuitive, a little counterintuitive for me for the multifamily that we do. And he's had to tell me that it's not about units. Let's get the design right first. So just a little anecdote there.
Can you bear down or give a better approximation of total density?
I mean, look, so Grant was saying it's between 300 and 500. I'm going to tell you, if you just took the middle and said it was 400, what you're talking about, that's 2 phases. That's probably talking about somewhere between 25 and 35 memory care units. But you need that number of units of memory care to have the appropriate amount of staff to provide the right type of health care. You need that type of those number of memory care units to also support the entire family that lives on the campus. So a couple will move into, say, a city hall, Well, one of the spouses may need memory care at some point. So what typically happens is the couple who moves into the 2-bedroom, one of them will move into, when one moves into memory care, the other one will move into a 1-bedroom independent unit. And that becomes a financial decision, but it also becomes a healthcare decision because now they don't have each other as a couple to support each other, but the independent person wants to be a little closer to the dining room, a little closer to the elevator, which takes them to the dining room. So when you take what we have found, it helped a really healthy community is in that 300 to 500 range, and call it 400, whatever. It is a very healthy community because you have that allows you to get 60% of that population to be independent and have that lower acuity so that you can now support that higher acuity, which means care, heavier care, with this hospitality staffing level. Just because you don't have the ability to necessarily walk like you used to walk, doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the fine dining experience that you've always had. We believe you should have that. So it takes this level of occupancy, and it's really boils down to that occupancy mix to be able to provide that level of healthcare and service.
Thanks. It looks like you're pursuing a local map amendment. Can you speak to that zoning change and what that affords you versus alternatives?
Sure, that is one path, but we think it's the right path to decide. As you know, the town of Chevy Chase is made up of single-family homes, and the zoning that is over all of it is a single-family zoning, and the rest of the zoning rules and regulations are made for that. So a map amendment would change the zone to be something that would accommodate senior housing. There are some other mechanisms that we could explore. They are not as straightforward and don't necessarily give us the ability to work together with the town to get the right massing and form together. So we think that the two-step process of a map amendment, which would change the zone in order to allow the senior living, and then we would go through the site plan process, then conform to the zone, and then that site plan process would be the time when all of the details get worked out. So that's why the process would take somewhere around 2 years even to go through that. So short answer, local map amendment is a tool that the county has in order to facilitate something like this.
Can we turn a little bit to the interconnection of roadways, traffic management off of Connecticut Avenue? It seemed to suggest, your plan seemed to suggest you had no intention of connecting to any existing town roadways. Is that correct?
That is correct. The 2 curb cuts that are there now are the 2 curb cuts that we will be using going forward. I will say that with the caveat that, we need to get it involved with Montgomery County DOT. We need to work with the State Highway Administration. We need to work with the fire marshal. We've had some preliminary conversations with the fire marshal, and I think that this can work. But it is having those 2 points as the only access from a vehicular standpoint put certain pressures on the rest of the site. That being said, that's our plan to not have Woodside or Thornapple continue in any way into the site, and just use the 2 existing curb cuts as they are.
Off of Connecticut.
Off of Connecticut.
And do you intend to manage traffic off of Connecticut and through any access restriction or gating system?
So we would have a guardhouse at the front that would have a security gate.
Yeah, security for vehicular access to come through. Yes, in that large portico share that you saw, you'd go under that part of the building to come into the site, and that would be access control for vehicles.
Great. You mentioned during your presentation the issue of the amenities that you're providing. Some of the amenities that you'll be providing will be accessible to the community and to the residents. Can you speak more about what amenities might be accessible to residents, including the pool, the walking path, et cetera?
Yes, so the first of all, you saw the restaurant spaces. We've covered that pretty well. The theater, for example, is something that, you know, our community manages. It's typically families who have residents, there's residents who live there that bring their family in to use that space. We do open it up though to the local schools for, you know, providing a venue for them to perform in front of different audiences. With the pathway system around the community will be open to the community. We want everyone to enjoy that and be a part of it. And then when it comes to the swimming pool, that isn't something that we're open to. That's something we're discussing. It's not something I can tell you a definitive answer on tonight because it has, you know, insurance implications, and it has there's a lot of other details that would need to be flushed out, but we're open to the conversation.
Some of the, just to play off of that, the small shops that might be at around that fountain, florist, ice cream shop, cafe, those are, you know, intended to be for, you know, community to interact with the property and with the residents in the community. So those are amenities that, you know, this is not card driven, you know, amenities. This is walking. This is
pedestrian.
Very small scale,
Mm-hmm.
You know, neighborhood things. I mean, I live in Chevy Chase, DC, and, you know, everybody loves Broad Branch. It's the greatest place, and everybody walks there and everybody gets what they need. And, you know, people use it as a place to hang out and to have community interactions. And, you know, that's what we see those small type of places here like.
Speaking about pedestrian access, do you intend to put any fencing or walls around the perimeter of the campus?
So we will have some limits to entering into where the seniors, into those courtyards and those type spaces. So we would keep the residents. It's more about keeping the residents safe in that so that they're not, some people so they wouldn't get lost or leave the campus. So in some cases, we will have some security around the campus of the buildings, but it would, and so that would only separate it from the tree line at the most.
Yeah.
And some, like on Connecticut Ave, it doesn't have that separation up on the corner, it doesn't have that separation, but more along the back where you have the steeper slopes and those type of things that become dangerous to residents. That I think.
So I think that the site is more porous along Connecticut Avenue, where the existing tree line isn't. I mean, there are trees there, but where the you know, the deep trees are, it's more porous along that edge, and then towards the back, the steep slopes are much less porous, and that's primarily service entrance and preserved for views from looking out. So there would be more fencing that would be in that area, but we haven't detailed fencing anyway yet.
Will pedestrian access be gained through or via Connecticut or through any of the fencing along the other sides of the site?
That's open for discussion. I mean, we hope it will be through Connecticut, and you know, we've taken a little liberty to say that the area along Thornapple should be, you know, should have paths in it, and I clearly want to hear from the people on Thornapple what they believe about that, and hopefully we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But you know, my hope is that it's more porous on that side as well. I think again, you're really limited on the west side by all those steep slopes, and then on the south side, there's also some slopes on that side as well, and some tree cover. So it's really Connecticut and portions of the Thornapple side that really lend itself to being more porous.
Thanks. Turning to the pool, I couldn't tell from the plans. I don't know if some could tell from the plans. Is that a rooftop pool, an at-grade pool? And what do you mean by covered?
Yeah, it's indoor.
It's actually the lower level. So you're seeing through the courtyard down to the lower level.
I see.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, the larger community will have access to the restaurants, the spa, or are you still determining that at this point? What kind of access to the shops, restaurants, and other amenities? I know you indicated you're not sure about.
They can have pedestrian access to it, and that's open for discussion. Every community sees that differently. So I think that's something that we should all just talk about and see how much of it you want it to be open from a pedestrian standpoint.
Yeah, I think one thing we want to hear from you, what are the in the community, and maybe it's at a different forum, but what are the components that are beneficial, and then we have to understand more details. Are we talking about 20, 30 people want to be added to something? I mean, that makes lots of sense. If it's 500 people going to a spa that's very small, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So we need to understand. You've seen a little bit about what we're intending, and we need some feedback on maybe more specifics of what's important to you, so that we can try and emphasize that.
Moving back to traffic and parking, two-part question. Do you anticipate seeking traffic control measures on Connecticut for access, ingress, egress to the site, stoplights or anything similar?
It's unfortunately not up to me. I hope not. I hope that by keeping the existing curb cuts that are there, and I mean, Tim, you can speak to what kind of traffic comes from senior living, but
yeah, our seniors and our families, I mean, we don't have traffic patterns that are matching up with the rest of the community. So our traffic times are off hours. But so a right in, right out is what we would expect there, unless the Department of Transportation told us something differently. But I just think it's so close to another intersection, I don't see that happening.
yeah, once the plan gets developed further, there will have to be a transportation management plan prepared, and that'll go and be reviewed by the county, and we will understand what components are necessary. It may not be that something right at the entry is necessary, but maybe there's something at adjacent intersection that needs better striping or something like that. Those type of things. It's more of a holistic analysis than one specific thing, and especially at this time, we don't know yet.
And all parking on site is underground, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And it's sufficient for all will be sufficient for all residents and visitors. You don't anticipate any overflow into town streets?
No.
Many, and again, we can speak to it better, but much in senior living, the cars that are there are really there for storage. They come and they park them and they stay there and rarely move. But no, you've used this in other communities, and it's sufficient to support the use that's on the site.
Yeah. So from a parking standpoint, the thing that we take into account is just really the transition from one shift to the next with employees.
Yeah.
That's really our biggest transition in traffic pattern.
And there's sufficient staff parking as well, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
Trash collection, trash removal, where will the trash, what are they called?
Yeah, trash compactors and how so we have trash chutes in the building that'll come down and they'll all collect to one location. Sarah, you probably can explain that better, where the trash.
Sure. Yes. At the bottom of each of the elevator cores, there would be a trash chute that will bring it down to a trash room in each building's basement, per se, in the garage. And then those get collected in they all wheel towards the central loading area. And then in that location, they would be put on, put onto the trucks, lifted into the trucks in a loading area. And as I mentioned, the loading area is actually sunken, and we did that purposefully. We wanted it for our residents as well as the community. Keeping that depressed means that those kind of actions are less visible to anybody in the community, which I think is a win for all.
So have you had any preliminary discussions with MCFRS? Sorry, Montgomery County Fire Rescue Service?
We have. They are, I'm sorry?
They have a standard, it's pretty clear standard as to what, density or number of units you're able to do without secondary entrances, meaning those off of Connecticut. Are you certain that your site plan can accommodate the development of number of units you're anticipating without providing secondary access point?
I'm confident, not certain, but we have met with Marie, and the two entrances on Connecticut is being considered two means. If we can provide certain measures in the buildings and around the buildings so that she can get her trucks in there and fight the fire. So they have, their preliminary indication is that what we have shown is acceptable.
Just to clarify for everybody, Marie Ball is fire marshal.
Yes, Marie LeBall is the fire marshal.
And so besides preliminary meetings with the fire marshal, what other meetings have you had, and what reaction have you received from planning authorities?
We've had a preliminary meetings with Park and Planning. We discussed what the processes might be, and that's one of the reasons we are looking towards a local map amendment and site plan process. But we haven't shown them any plans. We haven't discussed any specifics. You saw the first thing. So we have not discussed it with them beyond a very conceptual, non-drawing nature. We will, of course, but wanted to come here first.
These all of these units that you're contemplating are leased units. None are for sale, correct?
Yes, everything's for lease.
Oh, pets on the property, will they be allowed?
Yes, people will be allowed certain size of pets, but yes, they will be allowed pets.
And you may have answered this already. Well, this will be a continuing care retirement community, dedicated memory units, and can you speak?
We are not a licensed, we are not a CCRC. So a CCRC has nursing home beds, which we will not have nursing home beds. 99% of the people under today's environment can have end of life care at our community if they wish to have it. So that CCRC concept is an older concept fading out. We will be licensed as an assisted living home so that a resident can move into an independent unit, a city home that we call it, and they could eventually get assisted living services and never have to move out of their unit. So that's why we license the entire community. So we'll meet all of the state requirements for assisted living throughout the building.
Thanks. And Grant, you and I have discussed this already about some residents have noted that there are pink ribbons or ribbons tied around the trees on the site. And the answer to that is the town arborist did mark some trees with ribbon to denote tree protection areas for the perimeter fencing installation that just occurred or is occurring. I know that Galerie Living in Community 3 also have retained an independent arborist to do a full site tree assessment. And that might be related to that as well, but it does not indicate anything other than either inventory or tree protection for purposes of the temporary perimeter fence.
That is correct. That is 100% correct. As a side note, that fence, it has taken a long time to get it up. It is I think the perimeter is up, mesh isn't, and the gate isn't, and everything that we discussed in that zoning hearing is, or in the variance hearing is coming to fruition. It might even be complete as of tomorrow. But yes, those ribbons were specifically to make sure that the people installing the fences saw the trees.
Barney, I think I've consolidated most of the questions.
You've done a great job, Todd, but also these are really good questions that have come in from all of our fellow residents, and I really appreciate the focus, and it's good. It's been helpful to flesh out more issues. So thank you all. Are there any other questions? This is another, we still have a few more minutes, so if people have additional questions, we take them up.
There was another one that came in. I think it might be, you've spoken probably to the extent you can about accessing the retail and restaurants on the site, just for senior living community residents and their families, or for town residents. But I think you've indicated you're considering that right now. Clearly, some of the shops and restaurants along Connecticut will be open to the general public and to town residents. Walking paths will be as well. I think there's still some questions about how residents would access a walking path and things like that if the and the amenities, other amenities you're providing on the site, if the only access point would be along Connecticut and the rest of the perimeter would be fenced fully. And there was one question about the appeal of the younger retirement community, the draw of that, and how your properties have drawn those who are, between 55 and 65 to your community. Do you have a contingent of those age groups in your other communities?
Well, I will tell you the age is realistically in the 70s. And so we'll have seniors in their 70s, 80s who are still working. And they typically will, for example, a couple would take one of the city homes that faces Connecticut, and they still go to work every day. It's more about lifestyle, and just fewer things to worry about and enjoy, and work has become a hobby. So yes, and to confirm your statement about the retail on Connecticut, we definitely, our hope is that that's open to the public, and that we really have that interaction with the community, and that we have this transition, this pedestrian transition through the property. So it's just something that has to be flushed out in the next round of meetings as we go forward.
I think if I heard properly about the walking paths, you currently show access on Connecticut on Thornapple, but what you're really saying is that that's open for discussion as to where those access points might be into the town. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, we put them where we think they logically belong, but again, maybe they're not, and we're happy to explore.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
and to the extent there is a fence, the idea was the fence was between the walking path and the community, not between our new community and the walking path, not between the existing neighborhood and the walking path. So we're not creating a fence around the walking path that would separate
correct.
the walking path.
Thank you.
correct.
That's thanks for that clarification.
No.
Are the retail, that might be too preliminary to determine, but are you going to be seeking out, institutional operatorship of retail establishments, or more like small independent businesses?
We really enjoy having the local community businesses. And that's what we currently have in our community in the Atlanta market, because they're already engaged with the local community. So our hope is that, that's our first effort.
Yeah, it's.
The guy that owns the local sandwich shop that everyone likes to go to, that's the sandwich shop we want to have.
That's right.
The lady who owns, or the gentleman who owns the local floor shop or the spa, that's who we want to work with. Because the idea is that you don't give up anything. You're gaining, and you're actually going to gain things in your life, because now you don't have to be concerned with, is the house cleaned, or the bills paid, or the utilities taken care of, the grass cut. The idea is that you come in and you now enjoy and participate in your healthcare journey. And the way you do that is through your social interaction, by having access to the same things you've always had access to, and being able to do whatever, whether it was gardening or whether it was still going to your country club, we have the transportation to get you there. The goal here is for you to continue your life in a better way.
Thanks. There are some questions about bus stop. I think there's a bus stop pretty close to the campus right now, isn't there?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. And audio induction loops for residents with hearing aids. I'm
Yes.
sure you provide those types of facilities. So Barney, I'll wrap that up, but maybe there is an interest, I think, in discussing next steps and timing for refining the design and engaging with the town again following this meeting. So if you want to take that on, I think I've completed my consolidation of questions.
All right, great. Again, thank you from Gallery Living Community 3 for your presentations. Very helpful and a lot of very interesting things. And thanks to all the residents for their good questions. I think what I imagine, but I'd like to hear from the developers. You probably are going to be looking for some distillation of feedback on all of this, right? In other words, you really need a joined up perspective from the town of what are sort of initial impressions, perhaps, and also any particular points that seem warranted right off the bat that you would like to hear from us about. So I think we need to do a little bit of thinking ourselves to make sure that we're effective in pulling that together. And we'll be looking to Joel as the liaison to the committee and to the committee members to help with that. But I would also encourage right off the bat, while Todd has done a great job of pulling together all these questions, I think we would welcome comments from the residents who would wish to write to the town office, giving their impressions, their ideas, things they would like us to take into consideration. That would be welcome starting tonight. And we will certainly do our best to think through that and decide sort of the best way forward, which, just to put out some options, could be pulling together sort of a synthesis of what those comments seem to be, but also potentially some additional town forum just among ourselves to make sure that we can take on board, we on the council and on the committee can take on board everyone's thinking. But what I think we ultimately have to get to is, as I say, a distillation and a presentation of the key points that would be the sort of comeback first impressions from the town. But I think you've certainly given us a lot of very good food for thought and been very constructive here. Do my colleagues have anything further they'd like to add or suggest? Certainly open it up to them.
Thank you, everyone who's been on the call tonight and who's asked questions. And again, if please contact the town for any other questions that you have. We're around. Again, I'm going to meet with some people on Thornapple in the first week of March. It might be multiple ones, but this only gets better if we continue to work together and we see what you see. So.
Well, that's a very good way to end the discussion here, because I think from our standpoint, that steady dialogue back and forth is very important for us and will yield to the best result to a proposal, which, as you would obviously wish, would gain broad support. So having that dialogue is absolutely fundamental to having a good relationship and building the trust we need. So that's all good.
Well, thank you all. Enjoy the 64-degree weather tonight.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.